Hey 508, thank you so much for tuning in. This episode that you're going to be listening to right now is talking all about cuffing season. That's right, we're talking about dating, singleness, married, all types of relationships. So tune in, you don't want to miss it, and we look forward to hearing from you guys after.
What is good, 508 family? Welcome back to the 508 podcast. Today, we have a little bit of a viewer discretion is advised.
Cuffing
season. I'm just kidding. Not really. But we're definitely going to go there. We're going to talk love. We're going to talk relationships, dating, cuffing season. We are in February. So it is like peak cuffing season. You either had a successful winter, you got that boo thing, right? You got that guy or that girl. Yeah, we're gonna have to keep
Dude, Mike says single as a freaking brink
under control.
Yeah, cuffing season.
You
Yes,
either had a good one, or frankly, you did not. And on this panel today, we have representatives of happily married, relationship marriage coaches, the mom and dad of the 508 fam. They honestly have the rough job.
They do.
Of guiding, pastoring, correcting.
Full-time job.
It is a full-time job.
Singles. And Mike and I here represent the thriving singles in 2021.
Yes,
I represent the thriving singles. Mike represents single and sad. I'm just kidding.
Single, sad. You know what they do call me though? Mr. Cuffington.
No, they don't. So praise God for that. No one calls.
So on this episode, I would just prefer if you guys would prefer me as Mr.
Mike just proved why he's still single with that comment.
Cuffington.
I already hate this episode.
I'm gonna bring it back in here. Formal introductions. We have Pastor Devin Fry.
I don't want to be associated as y'all's pastor anymore at this point, even just with this intro, dude.
This is my favorite episode ever.
The beautiful Natalia Fry. Single and sad.
Never gonna be married.
Senor Cuffington.
Cuffington.
To my left.
I receive it.
Bald and beautiful Mike Turpek.
Yes.
And my name is Whitney, and we're glad that you're with us today. So the plan for today, cuffing season, is to take you, our beloved listeners, on a journey from that original DM, right? When you slide in to that girl that you're looking at during worship, like, right? Or that guy that you just think is a righteous man of God, that God has delivered to you to be the father of your babies, right? We're going to take you on a journey. Listen, Christian girls, we think like, I don't think like this, but there was a time, right? Anyways, we're going to take you from that moment all the way to ring by spring, cuffed for life, babies, all that. And we're just, really what's going on is Mike
A lot of babies on this podcast.
Listen, okay? I'm just kidding. Mike and I are going to ask the burning questions we all have about how in the world are we supposed to do this thing, find love, whatever. Should we just all go on The Bachelor? I think probably. That's on. I'll sign you up. I'll sign you up. You sign me up.
I'm not opposed to going on The Bachelor. I'm not opposed.
Producers of The Bachelor,
I'm
ABC.
saying, dude.
Bald and beautiful Whitney Cook. Anyways,
We need to
all
get
the
a
way to
petition
marriage.
going.
A petition, yes.
Let me
Okay.
pause real quick. I think it's very clear as to why these two are both single. And it's not hard to see. As a matter of fact, Nat and I will probably take over this podcast very soon. But I hope this is going to help. Trust me, some of y'all need the help. These two especially, but we hope we can help.
We're fully prepared to take one for the team here, right? And just say the things we're all thinking. So let's get into it. You ready?
Just
Let's do it.
Okay, the beginning of cuffing season, which Mike says starts when? When does cuffing season begin?
This is my interpretation of cuffing season.
Okay.
My interpretation is that it's like Thanksgiving. It's like
Why?
you're going into the cold season, okay?
Oh,
You've been
true.
single all year. And you're like, dude, I really want to like date somebody. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So, you got Thanksgiving coming up. You want to go to their family, you know what I mean? Have a little
Yeah.
family dinner, that kind of thing. Do a little
Try
bit of
their
Netflix.
sweet potato
She's
pie.
already looking at me like, dude, stop. I'm getting the mom glare.
judging you.
I'm getting the mom glare like,
Really?
I'm not judging you. I'm just watching. I'm
Right.
just listening.
Observing.
I'm not saying this is what I'm doing, by the way. I'm just saying that this is what cuffing season is.
Got it.
And then from a guy's perspective,
Yep.
I think that cuffing season ends right before Valentine's Day. Right before Valentine's Day.
Can you explain what cuffing actually means?
Hold up, pause.
For those
Do you
who don't
feel
know.
ancient? Because I don't know what cuffing season is until they started describing it to me. Did you know it beforehand?
I mean,
Like,
I've
I heard
heard
the
of
term,
it.
but I
Yeah,
never
I've heard
realized
of
that.
it, but I may
also
have been a
think-
victim of it without knowing I was a victim of it.
I also think it's
The
so
truth comes out.
dumb. I just think it's so dumb to think that there's a season where you're dating. Because it has nothing to do with the season of life you're in. It has everything to do with the season of life you're in, not the season of the weather, right?
No, it's 100% this. You want both hot girl summer, but you don't want.
Pause. Debrief that. Hot girl summer is like you're single hot girl.
Yeah, you're like single. You're living your best life.
That's
you're
like hooking
chasing-
up and stuff.
I mean,
Is what
yeah, yes,
People describe it.
that's what that means basically. Yeah.
Okay.
But so everybody wants hot girl summer, but no one wants like sad girl winter. Right?
Just you and your dog.
Right, exactly.
You and your two cats.
So like when you want to get cozy, like you don't want to do that alone.
you and your two
Is
cats
the
watching
idea.
Netflix.
We do not condone this mentality, right? There's way more to dating than just whether or not you're sad. But you know, I'm just kidding.
The truth is coming out.
Disclaimer. I love singleness. We'll get into it later. I'm not a sad girl
it
single.
sounds so genuine.
All right. Let's ask
Okay.
our first question. You ready?
Wait, you didn't answer my question. What would you define cuffing as?
Cuffing is in the summer you're single, in the winter you have somebody that you're like cuffing. So like in the winter when like nobody's doing anything, not partying, going out, going to the beach, you want to like be with somebody.
But is it a serious commitment or is it more casual?
It
you
means
uncuff.
tied down. That's what cuffing means. It means like
cuffed up.
you're like if like you're latched on. Like you can't go anywhere.
But is it like a
you're-
serious relationship?
It just means exclusive.
It can
Okay.
Be. It
Yeah.
can be
Okay.
serious though long
Yeah.
term.
Just wanted
like,
more.
oh, he cuffed. Means
Okay.
like, oh, like
He's off the
They
market.
committed.
And do some people genuinely think, oh, it's about to be summer, so I need to break up?
I've heard of people.
Yeah.
Yes, I have heard of
Yeah.
that.
That actually happens.
Yes.
Oh,
I
yeah.
have heard of
Wow,
that.
thank God we're counselors. People need it.
We do. I need it. Mike needs it more than me. So, okay, first question. Are we ready?
Wow, poor Mike.
Just getting rough.
Sorry, we do love you.
Seriously.
Okay, question one. In the beginning phase, right? I'm going to call this, I know we've been making a lot of jokes, but intentional singleness. Here's my beef. You ready? With
Okay.
single culture and Christianity, right? I feel like we think that being in a relationship and ultimately being married is this achievable goal, and it's this like leveling up moment, right? So singleness doesn't feel like a season that's intentional from God. It feels like the pressure is this is just a holding pattern until God blesses you with something else. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like I think a lot of people genuinely, I would love to hear if you think this is a thing from a guy's perspective too, but I think a lot of girls feel like, especially in the church, like, oh, I'm single because God's punishing me for something. So how do we live single, both in the light of relationships and not? How do we live single intentional rather than just being stuck in these like holding patterns of just waiting for whatever God has next?
Well, I want to say I think the church has actually not done a great job of helping people understand what dating, marriage, and all of that process looks like, singleness. There's this weird, almost feels like an expectation that like when you're single, you have to strive for finding someone to marry. Like that should be your number one goal.
Yeah.
And I know, like, you know, partially it's because Paul talks about, like, it's better to be married than to burn in, you know, lust or whatever. Like, it's better not to struggle, so you might as well just get married. So people are automatically assume, like, well, I don't want to struggle. I don't want to, you know, give into having sex or whatever. So I want to settle down, find someone, settle down, and not deal with that.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's obviously not a healthy approach because it puts a lot of pressure on people, puts a lot of pressure on yourself, timeline. Like people give themselves timelines. Like I need to be married by X date so
Totally.
that I can start having kids by X date so that I can whatever.
I think that's really dangerous.
It's terrible. It's horrible. it's unrealistic. Then that's all you focus on, and I think that's why a lot of people don't do singleness well, because that tends to be their main focus is, oh my gosh, like I'm about to be 30 and I'm still not in a serious relationship.
Eggs are gonna dry up. That's what girls think all the time.
It's true. Like I'm on a biological clock, and yes, there are some things that you want to be aware of, but at the end of the day, like, you know, God will bless whatever season you're in. Like if you're doing it, living your life to please Him according to His will, He's gonna bless your situation no matter what. Who cares if you're 40 having kids? Who cares? I know many women who are in their 40s that have had children, healthy, they've been able to keep up with their kids, and they're in a great place because they have the wisdom to raise their children, as opposed to like having kids young, but you don't know what the heck you're doing. Like,
Besides you guys, you're young and you know exactly what you're doing.
but I was 29 when I had Zion, so I was closer to my, and now I'm gonna be 33, and I just had a baby. So I'm thankful that I'm older as a mom, because there's a lot of stuff that comes up when you're in parenting, and you have to have the wisdom and the maturity and the head for it. Like you really have to be in the right headspace for it. And sometimes people are young when it happens and they just get thrown into it and you have to figure it out. But I just think, like, why not be in the right place, you know, for yourself, mental health, etc., to be able to take on certain things like that.
That's good. Do you think that single guys feel that pressure to, like, oh, I will have arrived when I arrive at, like, the relationship God has for me? Or is there more of a pressure the other way to, like, be this single guy and date around and whatever?
I actually had I guess I'll present attention to you guys because I think it's helpful. A lot of times, and I've heard even you talk about this, Dev, with your dad and with other pastors within our ministry, it's almost like a prerequisite to becoming ordained, like to be like married. So a genuine frustration that I've had with God was like asking the question, like, am I not ready? Like, are you like withholding something because I'm not ready? Or am I just waiting for something, or am I waiting for the right person? And there's a genuine desire in my heart to be a pastor. So I'm like, am I missing out? Am I not, is there something preparation-wise that God is doing in me? And He's like, okay, just wait a little bit longer. I have somebody prepared for you. Or is it more so like, I'm just in this waiting pattern just because I'm in this waiting pattern? But my genuine frustration with singleness, and there's so many things that I've seen you guys, like a lot of people getting married and having kids, and I'm like, I don't have the responsibilities that you guys have. I don't have to be home at exit. Like, I don't have, you know what I mean? I'm like, I don't have kids. Like, they have like 16 kids now. You know what I mean? They've had 16 kids in 3 years, and it's been awesome.
Us included.
So I'm like, yeah, me included. Yeah, I am their baldest kid. Thank you, Jesus.
No, the baby doesn't have very much.
That's facts, but he has more than me. Praise God. So I'd love. That's a tension that I've struggled with. Is I have a genuine desire to be ordained as a minister. But I feel like to a certain degree, I'm not released into that, because a prerequisite from the pastoral staff is for you to be released, you need to lead your household. So I'd love to get feedback on that.
Good thought. Yeah, I would say it's not necessarily, here's what I said to somebody recently. I said, I don't think all people should be parents. If that's not a genuine desire to be a parent, you should not follow the social construct or the idea that you should become one. I really think it's a calling. I think one of the reasons we have the issues in our society is because people were not supposed to be parents in the first place. I use that as an illustration because I think it's the very same thing with marriage. Paul says this a lot. He discourages people from being in a relationship. He actually says, if you have the gift of singleness, be single. I don't think that's your case at all. Definitely not your case at all, actually.
No comment as to me. We'll see. Time will tell.
No, you're definitely. He's like, Whitney, on the other hand, she's gonna.
I think she
single.
should be. No, I'm just kidding. So I think the principle behind that ordainment is it's not just, you don't just lead God's house well, you lead your house well. Yeah. And the order, we've been talking about this behind the scenes as a team a lot. The order is heart, home, and then your hands. So your ministry is last. Take care of your heart first, your home second, and then your hands. Whatever your hand finds to do, do with all your might. So I would say that would be the order. I think that's something we have to prioritize is our own health, our own growth, And I had a few questions as you were talking, which in your single season, are you spiritually mature? That does not mean do you know a lot of scriptures. What that means is, do you look like Jesus? That's spiritually mature. So are you spiritually mature? Are you emotionally healthy? I can't even believe how many people are sabotaging themselves because they don't take care of their heart first. How many people and leaders have we watched over the years? They just don't do the heart work. Pastor Emmy says it like this. He goes, heart work is hard work. But they don't do the heart work, so they're not emotionally healthy. So then when a trigger comes up, and by the way, when you reveal who you are in crisis, so you definitely know who somebody is when you're having a fight, when they're with their family, or when they're injured. That's how you will know the character of a person. So when they're emotionally healthy, you will see consistency. It's not going to be this, okay, Mike's walking in the door on Sunday, he's awesome, he's happy, but Monday, we don't know who he's going to be because he has this consistency where he's so consistently inconsistent. So emotional health, so are you spiritually mature? Are you emotionally healthy? And I would just say, are you relationally strong? You know, those three key areas I think are very intertwined and connected, especially in your single season.
Yeah. And those are things that you can work on in your single season, not just for the sake of pleasing or being equipped and ready for your spouse, but those are things that God has for his relationship with us. Like, that's stuff that he cares about that's really just between you and God. Like, do you have the character? Do you reflect me? Not because I want you to reflect me so that you can serve someone else. I want you to reflect me because, like, my love for you is so powerful and so encompassing. I want every part of your life to look like that, you know? And I think being single, like, I feel this as like it's this moment of like, man, God, sometimes there's nothing else but me and you, you know? So like, these key areas of my life, exactly like you were talking about, like, God, it's just you and I here. I don't have anywhere else that I can go to check against these things, right? Does that make sense? So I think singleness is like a great opportunity for that.
Yeah, I had a thought too off of what you said about, like, you were talking about like the blueprint or like the rule book that you created for your own life. It was like, okay, 23, I should like be like dating, 25, I'm married. By 28, maybe have 16 kids like you guys have, and it's going on 18 and sex time. I'm just kidding. So for me, what was interesting, I think during the beginning of the waiting process, God was teaching me a lot about me, and actually my tendency to pick up what I shouldn't in the waiting process. And I would get anxious about it. I would get anxious about the fact that, like, I was, 24, 25, I think, when I came to this ministry, and I felt insecure about it. I was like, why am I still single? Is there something wrong with me? And then what I would try to do is pick it up. I would like be like, okay, I need to do something about this. I need to do this. Maybe I pursue this or whatever. And it would get me in trouble. And it wasn't anything but my blueprint. It was like, I created that. I created, like, what I was holding was a little list of stuff that I created. I'm like, okay, by this age and this, and maybe I should have a house. And I'm starting to realize now as I let go, and I've noticed that sometimes I'll pick it back up and I'll be frustrated and I'll be hurt. I'll be a little hurt by it. I'll talk to God about it. I'm like, I don't feel good about this. Like, I want to be a pastor. Am I not ready? Am I good enough? And then some days I'm good. Some days I'm like, I'm surrendered, and like, it's not about that. And I love the single season and I'm enjoying, but it's not both. It's never like I'm always good, and it's never like, sometimes I pick it back up and I'm like frustrated with singleness. So what do we do? What do we do about that blueprint? What is a healthy way, I guess, for us to look at, especially for us and all the single people who are watching this? How do we get rid of the blueprint? Or how is there a better blueprint? What is God's blueprint? How can we surrender better? How can we wait better?
I think you focus more on inputs than outcomes. And here's what I mean by that. Outcomes are the results of, this is what I want, here are my expectations, here are my goals. By this year, I'm going to be married. By this year, I'm going to have a couple kids. By this year, I want to have this much influence. I would do away with that and focus more on inputs and habits. Specifically with this year for like my 2021 goals, I looked back in years past and I have this little outline that I use. It was more focused on the outcomes. I have one outcome this year primarily, and that is to write a book. But what I really put in place was habits and inputs in my life. So what I would recommend is instead of here are the outcomes by 2023, I'm going to have a wife. It should be in 2021, I'm going to go to counseling. In 2021, I'm going to find a mentor. In 2021, I'm going to invest in e-courses and read 8 books because I want to make sure I'm my best self. There's a really interesting passage of scripture, and it really brought revelation to me recently. You guys remember the story where Jacob is working for Rachel? He's working for Laban, and he's working for Rachel for 7 years. Works like a dog, ends up wedding day comes, and what happens? He sleeps with the sister. He sleeps with Leah. And so I always ask the question, I'm like, how in the world is this guy, he knows what he wants. He's obviously super attracted to Rachel, but he ends up in bed with Leah, and he was deceived, and the next morning that's what happened. I think it's such a powerful metaphor. This is why dating is so important. This is why knowing yourself is so important, because you can be deceived so often. You think you're with Rachel, but you're actually with Leah. So let's do 2 questions. One would be when it comes to dating. This is something I'm teaching for an upcoming sermon. You think you're with Leah, or you think you're with Rachel, but you realize there's a Leah. Because what happens with marriage, with relationships, we've seen it a lot, where conflict comes and all of a sudden they change into a different person. You thought she was Rachel, but then there's some conflict and you're like, oh, you have a lot more Leah in you. You know what I'm saying? Flip it back on the same script. So you're looking at yourself, you're like, the reason I think the best gift you can give somebody is a healthy you. I think the reason you work hard on yourself for those single seasons and those single years, I hope this is landing and connecting with some of you guys, but the reason you work so hard is because you want to get rid of the Leah inside of you so that you can fully be that Rachel, you know, not just for ladies, but also for the men. I think it's so important. That's the greatest gift you can give somebody is a healthy and a strong you. So less about outcomes, more inputs. You take care of yourself well. It's good stewardship, not selfishness. Jimmy loves that quote right there. It's stewardship, not selfishness. When you steward yourself, care for yourself, you'll be the best version of yourself.
Do you know the reference for that story in case anybody listening wants to go read
Not off
it?
the top of my head, I'd probably jack it up, but we'll throw it maybe in the comments.
Sure.
I think too, the other thing is like removing that stigma that you have to have things perfectly like lined up in your life, you know, and if it's not going the way that you planned out, then you're a failure or something's wrong with you, like taking that pressure off and like taking the stigma off of, you know, like Devin mentioned counseling. If you need to do counseling, there's nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly healthy to do counseling. I do counseling.
I would say
I get counseling.
everybody needs it.
Everybody needs counseling, whether it's on a professional level or like a pastoral level. I believe in professional counseling too, but I think people need to do away with, and I think we're seeing more of that recently, which is great, but do away with the shame and the stigma of like, you need help outside of just figuring things out all by yourself.
I think unaddressed pain is going to be the telltale sign that your relationships will fail.
Wow.
I think if you don't address it and you ignore it, you're really ignoring and throwing away your future. I would say that would be a telltale sign. So I would say that that's not just important, I would say that's imperative. I think that's paramount.
How do you know if you're ready?
For marriage?
So like, I think from a single perspective, it's a very interesting tension that you work with. You work with the thought where it's like, okay, I'm preparing, I'm doing what I'm doing in my waiting, I'm working, I'm keeping my hands busy, I'm growing, character stuff, getting rid of pain, forgiving, all that stuff is like good and healthy. Is there a blueprint for readiness for like marriage? So for example, like one whole coming together, you become one. Or is that more of like a myth in a way? Because I feel like for a single person,
Good coaching. Love that.
it can be a very, very tormenting thought where the enemy will whisper to you and he'll say, yeah, you're not ready. You're not good enough. No, they're not gonna, no, you're not gonna find this. You're not ready there. You're not ready there. Are you ever ready? Is there a blueprint for it?
I love that question. Here's a couple thoughts that come to my mind. I did this message. It was called the Peter Pan syndrome. So Peter Pan essentially was a guy that was growing, and he was young in spirit, but he really didn't ever grow up. And so he looked young, but he really was older. I think that's where a lot of people are at. So maturity is not academics. It's not accolades. Maturity is attitude. So the reason I say that is because I think there's a big difference between imperfect and immature. So all of us have imperfections. You're never going to be perfect. But immaturity is a very different thing. And it has very much to do with attitude. The message was, I think there was 3 R's. It was like, they are restful, meaning things that once eliminated their joy, they still have peace in the middle of that. They were responsible. They have order in their life. I would say that would be the 2 answers I would give is attitude and then order for your question specifically. And then the last one was relational. They had just healthy relationships and healthy relational dynamics. So I would say my 2 answers would be their attitude is mature and their life is ordered. Doesn't mean perfect, but I would say there's many different, I think through the Life Pie, there's this e-course I just invested in. And Life Pie is like your relationships, your physical health, your resources, I'm going to remember a couple of these other ones in a minute. There's a couple others, but basically your life is ordered. Doesn't mean perfect. There's some things that are less than others. There's some things that are stronger than others, but they're ordered. So yeah.
It's really good. So taking us past that season of singleness, like this intentional singleness, into dating, into, all right, God, like, I feel like you're releasing me from this. Like, we have done what you've asked me to do in this season, and I'm ready for the next one. Give us some practical tips. Like, I think that everybody listening who's single or has a single person in their life could use just some 101, how do I do this well? Because I see a lot of people, girls and guys alike, that get really hurt by this process. Like the dating process does not, even sometimes it does end in a spouse, but it also ends in a ton of, like you just said, unaddressed pain. Or addressed pain, like people are just bleeding, right? Because they dated wrong. So can you give us like maybe both, maybe some like red flags to, you're doing this wrong. If either this is the input or this is the output, like pause, find a mentor, start again, right? Or some like, good job, this is just like best practices. Like, this is how you ask a girl out. This is how you, whatever, go on a first date.
I think, my gosh, there's so many different things you can say to answer that.
It's a big topic.
It is. One of the things that just popped into my mind was like, usually single people do have some friends who are in relationships.
Yep.
So I think, start by looking at the friends that you do have that are in relationships and see if they're doing relationships well. And if they are, seek counsel from them and actually listen. Because one thing that I have found is I have so many people that have come to me for relationship advice, or, they vent about issues that they're running into in their season of singleness, or they started dating a guy, but the guy's sending them wrong signals and they don't know how to read these signs and blah, blah, blah. Or there's already red flags that have come up, but they don't know how to handle it. And I've counseled them multiple times and they still do whatever they want to do. So I think in situations like that, they're just being led by their heart and their emotions, and they're not willing to do the hard work, which is slow down, listen to advice, and practice some of that advice and see where it takes you. So that's like one thing that I would probably suggest to start off.
So red flag number 1 basically is if you are unable to listen to wise counsel or the advice of people who are doing relationship well, you are not in a season where you should be pursuing this.
Right.
I think that's a huge red flag. Mm-hmm. If you think you know what your counsel would say and you're avoiding that,
yep, you already know the answer.
That is a death sentence.
Yeah, it's good. You already know.
Yeah. I do a lot of content on this because obviously of our status of our people, but I did this message called Multiple Choice. I did it at Sisterhood, and there was 4 stages for Ruth. This was at least what I saw in Ruth chapter 2 and 3, where there was 4 stages. It was attraction to Boaz, then there was attraction, analysis, admiration, and then affection. So the way kingdom does it, as opposed to the way the world does it, kingdom goes information first, intimacy second. The world goes intimacy first, information second. Wow. It's really dangerous. Because the fastest way, one guy said it like this. He goes, this is a bomb. Write this down. Lust wears a condom, but love wears a ring. I thought that was brilliant. So I just think the fastest way to ruin your relationships is by diving deep into physical affection and intimacy first. You don't even know who. That's exactly what Jacob did. Jacob went into physical intimacy with Leah, and he's like, "Who are you?"
That's good.
And so that's why we have so many divorces. We have so many divorces because we want God's route, we want God's results, but you don't go to God's routes. That's the problem. And so we need to put into practice the principles that He gave us and showed us. So I would say those 4 stages would be, attraction, analysis. You're collecting information. Nat and I counsel people all the time. One of the things I say all the time is don't be emotionally married. We have people that are dating. Just because you have 2 Christians doesn't mean you have a Christian relationship. I'm preaching right now.
Write that down.
Just because you have 2 Christians does not mean you are in a Christian relationship.
It's really
And sometimes people will jump into a relationship and they're so committed right off the bat and they start seeing these red flags or they start feeling like uneasy about it, like something doesn't feel right about the relationship, but they're just committed. They don't know how to like take a step back
It's
and
foolish.
let it go. It is foolish. And you end up getting
Scripture?
married to someone that you're not, like they'll go all the way through with it until they get married and then you marry them and it's like, well, the excitement, the fun that leads up to the idea of getting married and then you're actually in a marriage, it's like, you're like, what the heck did I just do? Like, where do I find my, and I know lots of people that have found themselves in that position.
Totally.
What a word of warning. Like as a single person, if you're single and you're listening, that should make you pay very close attention.
Yes.
That it is possible to get all the way into marriage and be like,
miserably married.
wow, that's important. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Totally. I think it's so dangerous. And I think you probably think I'm crazy as a pastor saying it, but I think when you start throwing out the God card, again, you're dooming it to fail.
What do you
I
mean
really
by
think
that? What's the God?
God told me that I'm going to marry so-and-so.
Or scripture says this, so I think this is what this is, so I'm just going to stick it out.
Yeah, I want to keep it somewhat general so it doesn't sound like I'm attacking anybody, but we had one person who was like, this girl is my Gomer, and I'm going to follow and pursue her, and I'm supposed to take care of her.
Gomer is a
character
in
in Scripture, in Hosea.
in a story.
And I just thought to myself, like, at the time I didn't have the words or I wasn't equipped to say it, but he's like, God told me I'm supposed to pursue her. In the process, what that is that's called eisegesis. So you are isolating a singular passage, you're isolating a singular story, and you're neglecting all of the other information. I think about the scripture in Matthew, I think it's 7, where God says, don't cast your pearls to swine. In other words, he's saying, guard your heart. Don't just give your heart away. Don't give your wisdom away. Don't give your time away to everybody. You have to identify, to align and define who those people are. Because there are some people that are supposed to be family. There's some people that are supposed to be friends. There are some people that are wolves. And you can't just give your heart away to people. You can't give your wisdom away. Your pearls, don't cast them to swine. So in one story, they're like, this is my person I'm supposed to pursue. God told me. And it's like there's so many other scriptures that you're literally avoiding and neglecting. Wow. And you're going to hurt yourself and burn yourself because you are emotionally married, because you think God told you. It's so dangerous. God put principles in place. I tell this to Mike all the time. Be Spirit-led. I do think God speaks to people and can confirm. Yeah. But I also don't believe and subscribe to the thought that there's one person on the planet, because if one person misses out, then all of us miss out. So there are options, there are opportunities, there's chemistry. We talk about this all the time, but communication, character, and chemistry. That's really what you're looking for.
That's good. That's really good.
That's essentially, whenever we do marriage counseling, we're always talking about that. Communication, character, chemistry.
Can I ask you this question? Because I think from a single perspective, so going back to what you were saying about like, you meet somebody and there's like initial chemistry, you're having fun, and like you think you're supposed to be committed, and you're also like in a Christian relationship, so it's like there's some physical attributes to that where like you're attracted to each other but you're not allowed to do anything. So it's like there's a lot of tension there. It's like tension. So then people are like, oh, why don't we just get married and like kind of move forward with that? So a tension that I feel is like, I don't know, what if she's not the right one? Or what if he's not the right one? And then we're going down this path, and then especially within like a church context, it's like you see so many times, even people leaving the church because they were in a relationship, then they broke up, and then one of them's just like, I don't want to be here anymore. It's just like really awkward. And for me, there's one word that comes out of all that: pressure. Pressure. And I think even in my own life, I felt that. I felt like, even from external pressures of people putting pressure on me, like, why aren't you doing this, or why aren't you doing that, or why aren't you pursuing here, why aren't you pursuing there? And then from a different pressure that I put on myself, where it's like, this is the most important decision besides following Jesus that I will make in my life. It's like my wife. I'm like, my whole family, my lineage is going to come from this thing. And it's like, from a Christian perspective, it's one thing. From like, when I was in the world, it didn't matter. It literally didn't matter. Like, it's like, have fun, go out and do your thing. Right. Now it's like, no, I want to be a man of God. I want to do this the right way. I want to be a Christian. What does it look like to do it, like take the pressure off a little bit in a dating situation? I have a part B of this and it's a little bit less serious, but how do I take the pressure off?
I think about our experience, like, so I went into dating Devin and he knew his life was ministry. He knew his whole world would be ministry, all in, pastoring, etc. And I remember having a conversation with him and he was like, this is my life. This is what the direction that my life is heading in. And I can't date around just for the sake of dating around. Like, if I'm going to do this, it's like, I need to take it seriously. But that doesn't mean that we'll be getting married. So we had that conversation right away, like right at the very beginning, before we even pursued anything with each other. He was like, this could work, this could not work, but I'm not going to do this just to, see what happens necessarily. Like, I'm serious, I want to pursue you, but I also want to be realistic that there's a chance this could not work.
That's why you don't get emotionally married from the start. Wow. I think people are scared to break up. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think we have a lack of maturity, and that's why we can't break up in a healthy context. Yeah. Or you dive deep into physical intimacy, and you start having sex, and then of course there's soul ties, it's emotional, and then when there's a breakup, it's horrible. So I think there are different facets to that, but I would say that's why you don't get emotionally married, and you have that conversation up front.
Yes.
You being a leader, specifically in your context, same thing with you, although it's at least 3-4 years down the road.
I'm on, and for clarity, on relationship lockdown from my pastor and boss.
I didn't hire you to get in a relationship. I hired you to do a job. I would say 2 things. Genuinely, this is really good advice. Listen to this. So what I had before I had a relationship, I had clarity for my purpose. So essentially you could say it like this: I had a mission before I had a mate. So I knew exactly what I was supposed to do and why I was designed and put on this planet. So ladies, if you don't have a man, or you don't have a prospect in a husband that knows his purpose, get out of the relationship immediately. Because I had a mission. So I would ask this a simple question, which would just be like, what are you here for? If you don't know what you're here for, the one thing you do not need is a relationship. You need to figure out you first. So good. You need to get a word from God. So I went to her knowing, like, I know exactly what I was looking for. So what I had, and I think the greatest gift God can give people, is clarity. I knew exactly what I needed. I needed a woman who was going to be a great mother. I needed a woman who was also going to be a great leader and could withstand the pressures of ministry. My role and responsibility was going to be a little different at the time it was. We started dating at, how old were we? We're like 21,
I don't remember how old we were.
22.
We started dating 7 years ago.
Okay, so yeah, 22, 23.
But we were best friends before that, so I knew exactly what your life was like. We were
whole different topic right there.
We were doing ministry together. Like, I knew what I was getting myself into when you and I even talked about pursuing a relationship with each other. And even when we started dating, like a few months into dating, there were things we could not get on the same page about that were very important. And his dad suggested, why don't you guys do counseling? Don't wait until you get engaged. Don't wait until, you're ready to you think you're ready to take that next step. Just do counseling. And if that doesn't help you guys figure out what you need to figure out, then it's a clear sign that you shouldn't be together. And
we were fully prepared going in that this might mean the end of our relationship.
Yes.
Wow.
We talked about that. We were very clear on that. I didn't think that was going to happen. We got results back. Our relationship was harmonious.
We were willing to work hard to make it work and correct things that needed to be corrected.
But we're not going to fit a square peg in a round hole.
Exactly.
So good.
I think that's what so many relationships do, is they're just, oh, we're going to make it work. You've been dating for 5 years and you guys are in the same problems. Break up. For the love of God, break up.
Or you've been dating for a year and it's still the same story over and over
If
and
you
over.
have it's the same patterns.
In fact, it should actually be a little smoother in the beginning and then it gets harder as time goes on. But if it's been tough from the beginning, let it go.
It comes back to those 3 categories. Character, who a person is behind the scenes when nobody's watching. Communication, can you two communicate effectively? That was probably the biggest growth area for us.
Yes.
We're still working through it. We're
still a
certainly
growth
not,
area.
we're still not perfect in that for sure. But then I think there's a chemistry piece. God created Adam and Eve was a suitable helper. Suitable. So meaning that they fit like hand in glove together. So there's a chemistry piece for sure. And so some personalities don't mix with other personalities. And it's why you're fitting a square peg in a round hole. It's just not going to work. And maybe you can make it work because you're going to be loyal and there's blind loyalty to it, or you're love blind. I get it. But that's why you have to have counsel. And that's why you not avoid people that are speaking into your life and speaking into your relationship. I can't believe how many people are signing up for misery for the rest of their life because it seems like the Christian thing or the wise thing to do.
The crazy part is like
This
people
deception.
are convinced that marriage will make things easier.
It will
or
make
better.
things 10 times harder. Same
And
thing
when
with
you have
kids.
it's
Same thing
even
with
harder
kids.
than that.
Facts.
It's true.
But
And
thank
there are
God. I'm sorry, I keep going. I'm
I was
preaching
just
right
gonna
now.
say, like, you know, we always talk about how marriage will magnify things. You know, the things that are good become great.
Amazing.
The things that are not good
Awful.
become worse.
The worst.
But then when you have kids, like you work through a lot of that.
Yeah.
And then when you have kids, it's like more of that stuff gets revealed that you're like, oh, I didn't realize that I still had that to work with. And it happens with every kid that you have. So it's
They
not
add-
just,
yeah,
it's
they
not
add
just when you
more
first
weight.
become a parent. It's every time you have a kid, more stuff gets revealed to you that you're like, oh, this was like hidden in there. I got to work through that. So it's already hard enough as it is.
Yep.
You need to do it with someone who will support you, help you, make that happen. Like if you're doing that with someone who doesn't believe in you, doesn't help you, doesn't root
build
for
you up,
doesn't
doesn't-
build you up, doesn't. I mean, you're miserable forever.
And you're looking at, here's what
And
we
you
do.
drag your kids into that. That's the hardest part. That's the worst part.
Totally.
You drag children into
You
that.
screw them up because of that.
Wow.
I could say so much more on that, babe, but I would say you're really looking for somebody. I think our standards are so poor and they need to be elevated. So one of them is, don't be unequally yoked with an unbeliever. And so some of us take that scripture as a suggestion. Listen, if you're going to get into a relationship with somebody that doesn't even believe the same faith as you, that's going to be problematic for your future, not just when it comes to church, but like your whole life. How you raise kids, how you identify them, how you take care of them, how you're handling your money. So unequally yoked does not just speak to interfaith marriages, it speaks to your value system.
Wow.
So Natalia and I knew exactly our
we
values.
wanted
That's
to
why
raise
you take time to date. That's why you take time to have conversations. Get into some arguments if you need to, but you're just basically aligning your values. So we knew how we were going to discipline our kids. We knew what we needed, what the expectations are. Sometimes we fail in them, sometimes we exceed them. But we knew exactly our value system. That's what you're really looking for in a dating relationship.
It's good. So to wrap it up, I've got just one more question for the singles, for dating, even for some of the married people listening. We've talked about a lot of truth. Like I am like gonna go process all of this after this. What do you say to the person who maybe has definitely done this wrong in the past? And just some examples of this would be like, I know some girls who like, they know that they're in the middle of a toxic, even sometimes abusive relationship, but they're Christians and they've already been sleeping together. So they're like, we can't go back now. I got to marry this dude because we already had sex. So like there's no going back. Or we've been in this relationship for 5 months. I'm so invested. Or 5 years. I can't waste all this time. Or maybe the single person who's like, yo, my reputation's in the trash. Like I've clearly not been doing singleness well. Where do we go? Like, how do we make practically that like about face to, all right, God, I'm committed to healthiness in this area of my life. What do you say to that person who feels like maybe they're too far gone?
I think the very first place it starts with is humility. Like you have to be able to get over yourself, admit where you're at, admit what you're struggling with, admit the condition of your heart, everything, like be real with yourself, and then to surrender. Like you not just, because I know people who are like, oh, I know I'm like this. I know I'm struggling with this. I know, and I don't know what else to do.
And they won't change.
But they're not willing to change.
Wow.
So I think the number one place to start is recognize, humble yourself, and then surrender yourself. Like you need to surrender to what you know is right, what God calls you to do, what God says, what that God's best is, like he just wants the very best for you.
Yeah.
That's literally all over Scripture. Like he just loves you so intensely that he wants the very best for you.
Yeah.
And when you look at your situation, if you're in a crappy relationship, if you're miserable about X, Y, and Z, like that's not God's best for you. So you cannot just say, I know, but you need to humble yourself, and then you need to surrender that and be like, God, I know this is not what's best for me, but I want to do it the right way. I want you to come into my life and help me do this the right way. Allow the right people to speak into my life. Help me to receive, not just listen, but to receive and to be taught, so that you can have an actual heart and mind transformation, and then go from there.
Yeah, I think about two characters in Scripture. I think about Rahab, who was a prostitute, and then she was used greatly by God.
Yeah.
I have in my little sermon notes, I have this one little idea. It's not built out yet, but it's Rahab rehab. So she had some trauma from her past, and she had some trauma for what she was doing, but she came to the conclusion, no, I'm not going to do this forever, and I want to serve God.
Wow.
So she had to rehab a little bit, and I would teach through the process of that. And then I also think about Saul to Paul. Yeah. He was literally a trained killer to get rid of and kill and murder Christians. And then he turns out to be the superhero of the New Testament. And I just think, like, what was the process of that? You guys know how I love my alliterations. I think he had to reflect. So I think he had to internally reflect, like, do I like where my life is going? Is the condition of my heart in pain? Have I addressed these things? Or am I just escaping these things and diving deeper into more of my problems? Reflect. I would say rehab. You really need to get through some counsel. You need to spend a year, 2 years maybe, where you're just sitting under mentorship, learning, getting coached, getting developed, and rehabbing. Really, I think the key to maturity is not learning new things, it's unlearning old things. Mm-hmm. I think that's really how you're going to get mature. And then I would say last thing is release. You have to trust, first of all, God's process, but also submit under leadership and watch your life turn around in months. Months. It can happen like so fast. God can redeem time so quickly because he's sovereign. And so I would say those three things. If you're in that place, you need to reflect. Do I really like where my life is going? Rehab. I need to unlearn some old things. And then I would say release. You release your situation, your relationship, your control to God, and then also submit unto authority and watch get completely redeemed.
You just said release control, right? I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I think people struggle with is I have to be in control of my life because, things need to play out a certain way. Like we were talking about earlier, we create this blueprint for our lives. And then because of that, we just feel like we have to control everything. Oh, I'm not going to give up this relationship because I need to be in a relationship so that I can be married by X time and I can whatever. And I think, we have to learn that our life is not going to go the way that we want because we're in control of it. Our life is going to go the best way it could possibly go because God is in control of it. Yeah. So learning how to release control ourselves and give that control over to God.
It's good, baby.
Mm-hmm. So good. All right, fam. Well, I certainly have been baptized in wisdom, I feel like. I think I speak for all single and dating, married young adults. I'm sure I speak for Mike and I when we say, genuinely, thank you for your investment into us. It's people like you believing in people like us that's going to make lasting change. And so just want to say,
we love you guys.
Thank you for taking the time to just give us some. We know that you had to work hard for that wisdom, and we just get to sit here and receive it for free.
We're still working hard.
Come on. I love it. I love it. Well, Fam, we are the 508 podcast, and we believe here at Connect that genuine change in your life happens in the confines of, or in the context of relationship. And so we just want to encourage you, if you are in the area, come hang out with us in person. If you are not, we want you to find a local church. We talked a lot today about practical ways to change your life, to find more health in this scenario. If you feel a little overwhelmed by it, find people to do it with you. If you are around, we would love to be those people. So we love you from the 508 to you. We hope you have a good rest of your month.
Yay.
Peace out.
508 fam, we love you, and frankly, we hope you love us back. And if you do, you can show us by leaving a comment, like, subscribe, follow us on Instagram. I learned so much. Mike and I will be literally forever changed because of some of the stuff we learned. We want to know what you learned. I know something Dev said was, unresolved pain is a telltale sign that you are not ready for a relationship. Oof. We want to know, what did you learn? What did you get from this? Because frankly, I say this with all humility, I know you did get something from this. So we want to know what that was. We love you. We hope you have an incredible rest of your week, and we will see you next week for our next episode.